Hello, Aries. I don't know where you're listening from right now. Maybe in the quiet of your room, behind the wheel on your way home, or as night gently touches your sleep. But if you're here, if these words are reaching you right now, then this is not a coincidence. Someone has hired a hitman to make you disappear. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But stay with me, because what sends chills down your spine isn't the one who took the job. It's the one who gave the order. The one who once touched you with tenderness, now plotting to hurt you from the shadows. And this is only the beginning, because the universe has been trying to warn you for a long time. You just didn't see the signs. Not yet. Now, we're about to pull back the first veil and walk into the dreams you once thought were meaningless, only to find they were messages from the highest realms above. Aries, if you're listening right now, I want you to pause in the middle of life's breath, right in between all the things you've been trying to survive, and hear this message, as if it were a distant bell echoing back to you from the place where dreams begin, from a place where no one can touch you unless they are allowed to, because the truth is, if you're here right now, it's not by accident. The universe chose this moment. It chose you to finally say what you've been sensing all along. You're not imagining things. You're not paranoid. You're not being too emotional. You've been right the whole time in the silent nights. When the lights were out and no one was calling your name, you felt something, like a glance from behind, a soft noise in the air, a strange chill running down your spine. But then you shook it off, because your logic told you it's probably nothing, because people usually don't believe what they can't explain. But Aries, you were never meant to live only by logic. You're a flame lit by intuition. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't random that you avoided that dangerous offer. It wasn't luck that you missed that heartbreak, even when you didn't know why. It wasn't just some fluke that you woke up in the middle of the night with tears running down your face, your heart pounding like something or someone had just passed through your dreams. You were being protected in a way that's deeply sacred. There were moments you couldn't explain why you skipped that meeting, why you ignored that call, why you stayed silent right when you needed to, and all of it had a reason that didn't come from this visible world. Archangel Michael, if you believe, once closed a door you should never have opened, held back a hand you were never meant to hold, turned off a light you didn't even know was dangerous. You may not have seen him, you may not have heard him, but in those moments you survived what broke others. That was intervention. That was a sign. Aries, I know you're strong. You don't fall for miracles easily. You want facts, you want proof, you want action, but I also know you've felt it. You've stood at the edge of a cliff, and something nameless pulled you back. Not everyone survives the kind of heartbreaks you've survived. Not everyone stands back up the way you did. Maybe you thought you were alone. Maybe you wanted to give up. Maybe you whispered, "How much more can I take?" And yet, something small kept you here. A random phrase that stuck with you. A dream you couldn't forget. A stranger's eyes on the street that made your heart freeze, or maybe just the wind through your window reminding you you're still alive. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You've been guided. And if you look closely, really closely, at the thread of your life, you'll see that every step you took, someone walked beside you. The universe has been trying to reach you through signs, through your scars, even through the people who left. And now the message is clearer than ever. You're being protected by light, by something far beyond this world. Aries, you've walked through layers of darkness. You've survived things no one else even knew about. You've buried so many truths in silence, no one asked and no one ever saw. But I'm here to remind you, everything you felt, it was real. You feel deeply because you're awakened. You're sensitive not because you're fragile, but because you're connected to your soul in ways others can't even grasp. And that soul is speaking louder than ever. Remember, not everyone hears the call from higher realms. But you, the one listening now, you were meant to hear it. You're ready to face the truth, ready to step through the trial, ready to look into the dark without running this time. Because this time, you're not just surviving for yourself. You're here to end a cycle of pain, to begin a new era where light belongs to the souls who no longer fear it. And if you feel chills right now, if it feels like these words were written just for you, then yes, they were. The universe brought you here to hear what you've always known inside, but never dared to speak out loud. So now I ask you, can't stand the power of your light, who silently wished you'd disappear from this world, who is so afraid of your awakening They would rather send someone else to finish the job, to extinguish the flame inside you. The answer might be closer than you think. There's a truth we often try to ignore, Aries. Not because we're not smart enough to see it, but because we're too kind to believe it could be real. That the person who hurt us the deepest was never a stranger. They were the one who once held your hand with tenderness, the one who leaned their forehead on your shoulder during stormy nights, the one you believed would never walk away. But the truth, it's colder, quieter, crueler than you expected. Aries, I know you've protected someone before so fiercely. You were willing to sacrifice yourself. You held back your doubts just to preserve something called peace. But was it really peace, or just a thin coat of paint over the cracks of betrayal? Because when someone hurts you quietly, not with knives but with disguise, not with yelling but with that familiar smile, that's when it breaks you. They weren't reckless. They didn't lash out in one angry moment. No, they were patient. They listened. They collected your words, your dreams, the soft places you never thought to hide, and turned them into weapons. They weren't a stranger. They were someone you once placed inside your heart. In Buddhism, we call this a karmic debt. Two souls bound by unfinished business from another lifetime, returning now in familiar skin to settle the score, not to destroy you, but to awaken you. And awakening, Aries, is often the most painful process of all. You start to notice. Their eyes don't shine the way they used to. Their touch no longer holds warmth. Even their compliments feel calculated. You begin to step back, but your heart hasn't caught up yet. You still love, still try to understand, still blame yourself. That is the hardest lesson for a fire sign like you. You don't know how to love halfway, and when someone destroys the love you gave, it's not just a loss, it's a collapse. But what makes you different, Aries, is that you don't let that collapse destroy you. You learn to rebuild from the shattered pieces of your own trust. So hear this. Not everyone who once held you wants to see you thrive. Not everyone who said, "I love you," meant for you to grow. Some people can't stand your light because they've lived too long in the dark, and every spark from you feels like a threat. They don't want you to succeed, not because you've done something wrong, but because your very existence reminds them of the life they never had the courage to live. And when your presence becomes a silent accusation, a mirror they never wanted to face, they start trying to pull you back. At first, just little comments, subtle glances, then manipulation, gaslighting, making you question your own reality, and finally, a plan. You ask why. Why would someone who cried with me, kissed me, promised forever with me, betray me like this? I don't have a simple answer, Aries, but I know this. When your soul begins to shine, when you dare to live fully, to step outside the cage, when you finally remember who you are, you will either awaken or accidentally wound the ones who aren't ready to face themselves, and you can't take responsibility for that. You can't shrink for them, you can't dim for them. You were born to be you, radiant, bold, honest, and unafraid to love all the way. Aries, sometimes the greatest awakening doesn't come from light, but from realizing that someone who once loved you now wants you gone, not because you're evil, but because they can't handle the bravest version of you. And the moment you accept that truth, you step into a new kind of freedom, where you no longer need to be understood, no longer need permission. You just need to be yourself and keep going. No more holding your breath to avoid loss. No more shrinking just to keep the peace. No more tormenting yourself for someone who no longer loves you the same. Because you know now, your soul is worth more than any pair of eyes that choose to look away. But Aries, be careful, because what they've done doesn't end with words. It's not just lies, not just betrayal. What they're planning next will send chills down your spine. There are stories that chill you to the bone, not because of blood, violence, or the sound of a distant gunshot, but because the most terrifying thing is realizing someone somewhere planned your disappearance, not just to hurt you, but to erase you, to pretend you were never here at all. It's not just betrayal behind your back. It's a knife, placed at the right spot at the right time, and the one holding it doesn't even know your name. A hitman, no face, no mercy, no soul, just one mission: to extinguish your light. Aries, what I'm saying may sound like a movie script, but in the unseen world your soul walks through each day, there are dark contracts signed in envy, in bitter prayers, and in fear of the light you carry in your heart. Someone once knew you, got close to you, learned things you never dared to say out loud, and they made a choice to hire a rootless spirit to do what they didn't have the courage to do themselves. This spirit didn't care how much you've cried, didn't care how many times you forgave, didn't care how strong you've had to be just to survive. They were given a task, and they began watching, from afar, from the shadows, from places you never expected, from the silence in your life. You started to feel it, something was off, plans canceled at the last second. You were about to go somewhere, then hesitated. Someone invited you, then never showed. The phone rang, you paused, then missed it. Seemed like nothing, seemed like poor intuition, but it wasn't. It was intervention, not from people, but from something higher, because the universe never stays silent when the light of a soul is under threat. And in your case, Aries, Archangel Michael has already drawn his sword, not once, but many, many times. There were roads you wanted to take suddenly blocked. Opportunities that seemed perfect gone in an instant. You thought, why am I so unlucky? You blamed yourself. Maybe I didn't try hard enough, but what you didn't know was that every blocked path was actually a rescue. Michael didn't show up with shining armor or golden wings. He showed up in that last-minute delay, in that strange feeling that made you turn around, in that unexplainable fatigue that kept you home, in that faint glow that made you hold off on a decision you thought was simple. And that delay saved you from walking into something you weren't meant to face yet. In healing astrology, we believe souls with great missions are always tested by darkness in all forms, not to destroy them, but to ask the question, is your light real? Is your faith deep enough? Is your love strong enough to survive betrayal? You weren't born for an easy life. You were born to lead by example, to light fires in places no one dares to enter, and because you chose to live fully, they fear you. Not everyone, but the ones who haven't found their own light will always tremble before someone brave enough to shine. They don't know how many times you collapsed, how many chapters you crawled through in silence, how often you believed you'd never rise again, but you did, and that is the deepest offense to the broken souls who need others to fall in order to feel whole, so they hired someone to do the dirty work for them. No fingerprints, no confession, just make you disappear, but you're still here, still breathing, still loving, still forgiving, still rising, because your light isn't made of luck, it's made of choice. You chose not to shut down, and that light is something no assassin can ever reach unless you open the door. That's the most important lesson. No one can destroy you unless you hand them the key. But what if the one holding that key is the same person you still carry in your heart? There's a kind of pain that strong people often hide too well. It's not the pain of failure, not the sting of judgment from the world outside. It's the quiet, burning ache of realizing that the one who planted darkness in your life was someone you once trusted the most, and they didn't come from some faraway place. No, they came from the closest corner of your past, a person you once called your friend, someone who once whispered blessings into your dreams, maybe even your own flesh and blood, someone you forgave more times than you've ever forgiven yourself. And do you know what hurts the most, Aries? They didn't leave, they stayed, but not to love you. They stayed to watch, to collect, to wait for the right moment, not with a knife, not with a scream, but with ritual, with a photo you once sent, an item you forgot at their home, a strand of hair from your last embrace. They took it all to a place you'd never expect, an altar, a black candle, a whispered prayer not meant for life. They don't want you dead. No, they want you, half alive, to forget your dream, to forget your strength, to forget the light in your own eyes. A spiritual attack, silent, but as devastating as a hurricane beneath the surface. And if you've ever felt exhausted for no reason, if life keeps slipping from your grip no matter how hard you try, if it feels like you're living in a fog, no direction, no drive, no trust left, not even in yourself, then maybe you've already been in the storm. You just didn't know who drew the map for it. I know, Aries, you don't want to believe it. You loved with all your heart, with all your innocent, honest fire. You opened yourself up. You held nothing back, and they took that love to feed a curse. You gave them truth. They offered it to the dark to silence your voice. You gave them a piece of your light, and they used it to lead you astray. But true light, Aries, can't be manipulated, can't be dirtied, and it absolutely cannot be extinguished. By trembling hands in the shadows, you survived. Even when no one saw what you went through, even on those nights you woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing, with no idea why. Even on the days your body felt heavy, your mind wandered, your eyes felt empty. Still, You kept going, step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat, even though your soul has never truly rested. You were betrayed, and that's not wrong, but you are not a victim. You are the one breaking the cycle. In Buddhism, they say, those who sow darkness will be swallowed by it. Not because someone punishes them, but because every action is a seed, and seeds always bloom into what they are. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back in. It doesn't mean reopening the door. Sometimes, forgiveness means closing that door forever and letting your soul rest in a home where no strange winds sneak in at night. You don't need revenge. You don't need anger. You don't need to demand justice. The universe saw everything. All you need to do is pull your light back from where it was wasted and turn it toward what's waiting for you, where your light is no longer used but honored and multiplied, because Aries, everything they did didn't make you weaker. It just taught you the sacred limits of trust. Now, you've learned how to love without giving it to the wrong ones, how to forgive without losing yourself, how to believe in the good while still walking away when the darkness shows its face. And maybe all of this wasn't meant to destroy you, but to forge you into a kind of light they can no longer bear to look at, because it's no longer innocent. It's been forged in fire, and light that's been through fire can never be touched by a curse. There are flames born to warm, and flames that exist to burn down everything rotten to the core. Aries, you didn't come into this life to bow your head, not to shrink, not to learn how to be quiet, but to break things, to end them, to stop the cycles of darkness your ancestors accepted as fate. You carry a different kind of fire, not the kind that flares up and dies out, but a sacred fire, a flame passed down from the hands of those who came before, from souls that were burned by injustice, by silence, by judgment, souls that never had the chance to step out of the storm. And you, Aries, you are the one chosen to rewrite the story. The wounds you've carried, the times you collapsed with no one seeing, the years you felt lost in an invisible maze, they weren't meaningless. They were your final trial by fire, the soul's brutal exam, so that today you rise, no more trembling, no more asking for permission, just to be who you are. The light in you once silenced, once called too much, too wild, too fast, is now exactly the light the world is starving for. You're not surviving just for yourself, you're surviving to blaze a trail to prove that it's possible to walk through darkness and still come out whole, that it's possible to forgive without forgetting, to love again, to trust again, not from naivety, but from clarity. You are living proof that this soul cannot be extinguished. And you know what? That spiritual gift inside you, the one buried under work, heartbreak, and doubt, is waking up. You're sensing what others can't, touching layers they don't even know exist. You feel the truth in someone's eyes, even when their words lie. You sense energy that's off, from a single accidental shoulder bump. That's not paranoia. That's not being overly sensitive. That is your spiritual memory coming back online. You might not have a name for it yet. You might not know it's intuition, or healing, or a psychic gift, but your soul knows it's working. It's guiding you back to yourself. I know you felt the darkness around you, not with your eyes, but in your spine. Sometimes you'd walk into a room, and you just knew something was off. A loving gaze, but your gut whispered, don't trust that. You're not crazy, you're not broken, you're awake. And I believe, if you share your story, even just a few words, under this video, under this post, wherever you feel called, then maybe somewhere, a soul trembling in their own darkness will find your fire. Where you once thought your story ended might be exactly where someone else begins. So Aries, I invite you, tell it, tell the story you've kept hidden, because who knows, you might be the reason someone else doesn't fall the way you once did. And when you speak your truth with courage, you don't just heal yourself, you heal the ones who still don't have a voice. And that light, your light, becomes the closing chapter to an old past and the opening line of a future only you were born to write. Because when the world thought you couldn't rise again, you stood up, stronger, brighter, and this time, nothing can put you out. You didn't just survive, you evolved, you transformed. You were born to break that curse, not just for you, but for every soul walking behind you. And now, you need to know the final truth. The one that makes those who once tried to destroy you shake with fear. You weren't destroyed. You became the flame that can never be put out. One early morning, before the sunlight even touches the treetops, you'll wake up not because of an alarm clock, but because something inside you moved just a little, but enough for you to know something has shifted. That old weight on your chest is gone. The voice in your head saying, maybe I'm not enough, has gone quiet, and in its place, there's stillness, clear, clean, like the first breath after a long, brutal storm. And then, you'll step out of the version of yourself you used to be, as if your soul finally shed a cursed skin, one that was once bound by fear, by judgment, by a past that refused to let go. It will feel like a golden doorway suddenly appears before you, hovering in the air, glowing, silent, and patiently waiting for you to walk through it. No one's going to push you. There's no applause, no fireworks, just you. And a choice, that doorway. It doesn't lead to some fantasy paradise. It leads you back to you, the version you lost, the one that never needed to prove anything to anyone, the one who never had to squeeze into clothes that were never made to fit. Aries, every loss you thought was the end has become your foundation. Every time you were misunderstood, rejected, dismissed, that became the raw material for compassion. The nights you cried in silence, the days you wore a mask just to survive. They've become light, not to shine for others, but to keep you warm in the colder seasons of life. You no longer need to wait for someone to save you. No outside miracle is required, because now you are the miracle. You are the living, breathing proof of rebirth, proof that when the soul chooses love over revenge, it becomes a light nothing in this world can stop. You walked through the fire, and instead of being burned, you blazed, you rose, not because someone reached out a hand, but because your heart still believed that kindness can survive pain, that love still matters, and that your soul still has work to do in this world. That doorway, you don't need anyone to open it for you, because you are the key. And from the moment you walk through, there's no going back, no falling back into that old swamp. No voice can define you ever again, because you rewrote your name in light. Aries, you weren't born to blend in, you were born to ignite what's never existed before. Maybe you don't fit the mold, maybe you're too bold, too wild, too real, but that's exactly why you're the one who forges the path for yourself and for those who will walk behind you. Now that you've entered the brightest part of your journey, there's just one thing I want to say to you, slowly, softly, like placing a thank you note into your hands, with all the reverence it deserves. Thank you, Aries, for walking through fire and not losing yourself, for not letting the dark destroy the light, for choosing to rise, even when everything inside you wanted to fall, and most of all, for choosing to love, even when love betrayed you, for choosing to understand, even when you were misunderstood, and for choosing to become the light, even when all you knew was darkness. I pray that every step you take is divinely guided, that every word you speak carries power, and that the flame within you never dies until we meet again. From one healing soul to a warrior of light, you are not alone.